In the fall of 1852, a 20-year-old pioneer named John Tulley Kerns reached the Willamette Valley. He took out a pen and calculated an incredible number, 2,577 miles. That is how far he had walked on the Oregon Trail from his home in Indiana. John was not a mountain man or a famous general. He was an ordinary 20-year-old driving a team of oxen into the unknown with his younger brother Samuel. But because John kept a diary along the way, he left behind something rare, a raw, honest look at what it really took to survive the Oregon Trail. Over 6 grueling months, John experienced heartbreak, bitter cold, cholera, comedic blunders, and a landscape so unforgiving it nearly broke his spirit. This is his story. On March 15, 1852, John and his 18-year-old brother Samuel loaded their wagon and drove away from Rensselaer, Indiana. John was leaving behind his mother's grave, along with every childhood friend he had ever known. As their wagon pulled away, John wrote that the wind seemed to repeat a single lonesome sound: farewell, 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 forever. Just 6 days into the trip, the brothers hit their first real test at Sugar Creek. The wooden bridge was completely submerged under 18 inches of rushing water, with planks floating away over a 20-foot deep channel. Most people would have turned back or waited. Instead, John and his crew shoved new wooden planks into the raging river and plunged straight through. Swim, drown, or get across. One of the three. We had started to Oregon, and were bound to go there or die a-trying. As John pulled into Iowa, his heartbreak gave way to pure annoyance. Stuck in freezing rain and paying extortion prices for rotten hay, he roasted the local towns in his diary. Unionville, homely people, homely houses, and mud all united. Iowa, you must do better by us than this, or we will never come to see you again. Yet, despite the bad roads, John was still a young man looking for adventure. After driving 20 miles through ice and mud, his group camped near an abandoned schoolhouse. Instead of sleeping, John and some friends heading to California snuck inside in the dark to conduct a séance, using spiritual wrappings to ask spirits if they'd make it to Oregon alive. But when they finally reached the Missouri River near Council Bluffs, the adventure vanished. For 11 straight days, John's wagon train was trapped in a chaotic traffic jam on the riverbanks. The ferry operation was a disaster. Old, dangerous flatboats battling violent currents. John watched one man drown and another get crushed to death under a wagon team. With thousands of wagons backed up ahead of them, and John himself falling ill, morale hit rock bottom. I get very much discouraged while laying by so long, being very unwell most of the time. On May 19th, they finally ferried across the Missouri River, leaving the United States behind, and in John's words, probably forever. John tried to regain his swagger, joking in his diary, "I am going to Oregon myself. Go it while you're young. When old, you can't." But as they pushed deeper into Nebraska, that youthful bravado was about to hit a brick wall. By June, John looked out across the Platte River Valley and estimated he could see 5,000 wagons on the horizon. But that massive crowd carried a deadly companion, cholera. The jokes in John's diary vanished. Passing camps where people were dying overnight, John was surrounded by fresh graves and facing an invisible killer he couldn't shoot or outrun. He wrote 2 sentences that reveal his raw, unvarnished fear. I began to feel like I would rather it was somebody else than me. I wish I was in. He was so homesick and terrified that he couldn't even bring himself to write the word home. He just drew 4 dashed lines on the page. By August, their animals were dropping dead from exhaustion. John noted, 5 head of cattle died last night, which makes us think the elephant is not far off. To pioneers, seeing the elephant meant facing the harsh, crushing reality of a journey that was far tougher than they had ever imagined. The trail was a moving city with no sheriffs or courthouses, and frontier justice was brutal and swift. Passing a wooden sign nailed to a tree, John recorded a grim warning left by another wagon train. Saw a notice of a man being hung for murder and robbery. The notice was headed, "Dried beef for sale, wholesale or retail." Danger did not just come from lawless men. Sometimes it crept right into your tent. One night, weak from illness and exhausted from traveling through the day's heat, John turned in early. He crawled into his tent alongside his brother Samuel and 2 friends, leaving the bottom canvas rolled up a foot to catch a breeze. John began dreaming that a panther leapt onto his chest. He woke up with a half-smothered scream, only to realize it wasn't a dream at all. And when awakened thoroughly, behold, one of those mountain wolves, or coyotes, was upon me, sure enough. A coyote had slunk under the canvas and stepped right on top of him. John's screams woke up his friend, James McCoy, who reacted instantly, kicking his legs out and launching the coyote spinning out of the tent into the night. By late August, John's wagon train entered the homelands of the Nez Perce, Cayuse, and Walla Walla nations. Crossing the Grande Valley in early September, John traded worn-out cattle for fresh horses with Nez Perce traders, deeply impressed by their vast herds and the beauty of the region. The Nez Perce have large herds of fine horses. The valley is one of the most beautiful spots I have ever seen. But that beauty quickly turned into a high desert nightmare. Basic survival became a daily battle. At the watering hole called Well Spring, John noted that he had to haul out 2 whole wagon loads of mud just to get enough water to cook. 3 days later, choking on trail dust, his spirit finally broke. Moses wept, "How the dust flew! Yee-ho, we are in Oregon. Methinks, if this be Oregon, it is not the place I started for, enduring too many hardships and privations. Besides, leaving a blank in my life, to ever be put off into such an ocean of gloom, eternal horrors, and destitution as this. He was so bitter that he added the Creator must have made such a desolate land as a refuge for the wicked who couldn't face honest men. John Kerns' journal is an amazing snapshot of what happened on the Oregon Trail. He wrote almost every single day for all those months that he traveled across the country. But not only did he write about his observations of what he saw, he also wrote about his inner state of mind, the ups and downs, the joys, the sorrows, the hardships of being on the Oregon Trail. In late September, John's party reached the foot of the Cascades. Rather than taking the dangerous Columbia River route, they paid the toll for the Barlow Road, a treacherous track cut through thick timber around Mount Hood. The ascent over Barlow Pass was brutal. Starving livestock collapsed from hunger, while men used ropes and tree trunks to control wagons sliding down steep mountain trails. Wound our way through the forest over a stony, crooked, and hilly road, grass having been so scarce as morality for the last 2 days. Mount Hood stands just north of our camp, with its lofty white dome penetrating the ethereal blue. They now face the most dangerous section of the entire road, Laurel Hill. On September 28th, a wagon broke down ahead of them, blocking the narrow trail. Had to sleep standing on the side of a high, steep, and difficult a hill as ever was passed over by a wagon. Left 1 ox and 2 horses today, entirely used up. For 3 agonizing days, they descended through torrential downpours, wading through mud holes and crossing the swollen sandy river while abandoning exhausted cattle along the trail. Finally, on Saturday, October 2nd, after more than 2,500 miles on foot, the dense timber of the Cascades finally broke open, revealing the valley below. Emerging onto Philip Foster's farm, John took out his journal. Reached Foster's, the first house in the Willamette Valley after getting out of the Cascade Mountains. Our lost spirits returned at this site, and we feel as if our journey was well nigh ended. The journey had cost them 20 head of cattle, 4 horses, abandoned gear, and friends left behind in fresh graves along the Platte River, but he and Samuel had made it. John Kerns built a life here in Oregon. He got married, raised 5 children, and settled in the Portland area. Tragically, just 20 years later, he passed away at the age of 40. Most of the pioneers who crossed the trail in 1852 faded quietly into history, but because John wrote down what he saw every single night, he left us 4 simple words that closed his extraordinary diary. Here ended the journey. Because John wrote down his story every single night, we know what it took to survive the Oregon Trail. If you want early access to our next video, click the join button below. It helps support the channel. And leave a comment with your favorite moment. We'll see you on the next Oregon adventure.